In October 2024, a Cincinnati radio host received a transmission that shouldn't have been possible. A child's voice repeating the same sentence every single night for 3 weeks straight. The voice belonged to a girl who vanished in 1991, 33 years ago, and she was still trying to tell someone what happened to her. Subscribe and join the channel for more cases that defy explanation. But let's go back to where it all began. Marcus Webb had been running the overnight shift at WCN-FM for 14 years. 52 years old, divorced twice, living in a studio apartment above a convenience store in Northside Cincinnati. The job wasn't glamorous, but it was stable. Mostly he played music, took call-ins from insomniacs and truckers, and counted the hours until 6 a.m. Nobody bothered him. The night shift was his kingdom. October 11th started like any other. He arrived at 10 p.m., made his usual black coffee, scrolled through the overnight schedule. At 2:47 a.m., between a commercial break for a local injury lawyer and a pre-recorded segment on sleep disorders, something cut through the broadcast. Not a technical glitch. Something deliberate. A voice, young, female, maybe 8 or 9 years old. They put me in the dark place. They said I wouldn't tell. They said I wouldn't tell. Marcus thought it was a prank call that had somehow breached the studio filters. He checked the phone logs. Nothing. The technical board showed no incoming signal. He was alone in the station. He rewound the audio recorder. The voice was there, crystal clear, sitting perfectly in the dead air between segments. He didn't report it. He told himself it was some kind of equipment malfunction. He'd have maintenance check it in the morning. The next night, at 2:47 a.m. exactly, the voice returned. They put me in the dark place. They said I wouldn't tell. They said I wouldn't tell. Same words, same inflection, same desperate hollow tone. Marcus pulled up the technical logs. No incoming calls. No broadcast interference. The voice existed only in the dead air, the space between scheduled content where nothing should be transmitting. By the 4th night, Marcus had stopped pretending. He recorded every instance. By the 8th night, he'd called the station manager. By the 11th night, he'd called the Cincinnati Police Department. Detective Sarah Chun arrived at the station on October 23rd with a voice specialist and a skeptical expression. They set up monitoring equipment. They waited. At 2:47 a.m., the voice came through again, and this time it was captured on multiple independent devices. Not interference. Not a malfunction. Verified audio. They put me in the dark place. They said I wouldn't tell. They said I wouldn't tell. Sarah's skepticism evaporated. She'd been a detective for 19 years. She knew the difference between the impossible and the unexplained. This was the latter. Within hours, the station's metadata was being analyzed. The voice frequency, the timestamp, the repetition pattern, all of it pointed to something deliberate. Someone, or something, was broadcasting through an Ohio radio station using equipment that left no trace. Sarah ran the phrase through missing persons databases. Nothing matched immediately. But the obsessive repetition, the specific claim about the dark place, these weren't random. Someone was trying to communicate. Someone had been trying for 33 years. By dawn, Sarah had made a decision. She was going to find out who that voice belonged to. And more importantly, she was going to discover why it had chosen now, October 2024, to finally break its silence. The girl in the static had something to say, and she wasn't going to stop until someone listened. Sarah Chun sat in the Cincinnati Police Department's basement archive at 7 a.m., surrounded by case files from the early 1990s. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Dust particles floated through the air like suspended time. She'd pulled every missing child report from 1991. There were 47 that year in Ohio alone. The phrase kept echoing in her mind. They put me in the dark place. They said I wouldn't tell. A child wouldn't invent that phrase. It was too specific, too traumatic. The repetition suggested obsession. The kind of obsession that comes from a message that was never delivered, a warning that was silenced before it could be spoken. Sarah's partner, Detective James Morrison, arrived with 2 coffees and a laptop. 48 years old, methodical, the kind of cop who didn't believe in coincidences. He set the coffee down carefully on a filing cabinet. Voice analysis came back. He said, pulling up audio waveforms on a screen. The voice is consistent across all 11 recordings. Same vocal patterns, same breathing rhythm, same emotional timbre. If this is a hoax, it's being executed by someone with professional audio equipment and intimate knowledge of the station's broadcast window. Or, Sarah said, not looking up from the files, someone's been trying to send this message for a very long time. They worked through the morning. Missing children, abductions, unexplained disappearances. Most cases were resolved within weeks. Runaways, custody disputes, tragically, a few homicides. But some remained open. Cold files. Forgotten files. At 11:30 a.m., Sarah's finger stopped on a photograph. Emma Hartwell, 8 years old, missing since August 14, 1991. Last seen leaving Sycamore Elementary School in Westwood, Ohio. Never found. The case file was thin, barely 2 pages. A brief investigation. A dead end. A mother's statement. She was afraid of something. She kept saying the dark place, but she wouldn't explain what she meant. Sarah's hands went cold. James, look at this. He leaned over. The photograph showed a small girl with dark hair and serious eyes. Emma Hartwell stared directly at the camera with an expression that seemed older than her years. The voice, Sarah whispered. The age matches. The phrase matches. 8 or 9 years old. The dark place. James pulled up the missing persons database on his laptop and cross-referenced everything. Emma Hartwell, missing 33 years. No body recovered. No arrest made. The case had been officially closed in 1996 due to lack of evidence. Why now? James asked. Why is she transmitting now? Sarah didn't answer immediately. She was reading Emma's file more carefully. The details were sparse, but one entry caught her attention. A statement from a neighbor, Mrs. Patricia Donovan, claiming she'd seen a man, tall, gray hair, possibly in his 60s, speaking to Emma near the elementary school on the day she disappeared. The man had never been identified. No photograph. No name. The file notation read, lead investigated but ultimately unproductive. Sarah closed the file slowly. Someone silenced her in 1991, she said. And now, 33 years later, she's found a way to speak. A radio frequency where no one can trace the source. A message that repeats until someone hears it. That's impossible, James said. But he didn't sound convinced. So, is a voice broadcasting through a radio station with no transmission source? Sarah replied. She made a decision. She pulled out her phone and called Marcus Webb at the station. Mr. Webb, I need you to do something for me. Tonight, at 2:47 a.m., I want you to broadcast a question directly into the dead air. I want you to ask her name. Marcus hesitated. You think she can hear us? I think, Sarah said carefully, that whoever, or whatever, is reaching out has been waiting 33 years for someone to answer. It's worth asking. That evening, as Cincinnati settled into darkness, Marcus Webb sat alone in the WCN-FM studio. At 2:47 a.m., he leaned toward the microphone and spoke directly into the void. If you're listening, what's your name? The dead air crackled. Static filled the speakers. Then, clear and unmistakable, a child's voice responded with just 2 words. Emma Hartwell. The signal cut out immediately. But it was enough. Sarah and James, monitoring the broadcast from the police station, exchanged a look. The impossible had just become undeniable. Emma Hartwell, missing 33 years, was trying to tell them something. And whatever had happened to her in that dark place in 1991 was something that had refused to stay buried. The real investigation was about to begin. Sarah spent the next 72 hours reconstructing 1991. She pulled court documents, school records, and police interviews from 3 decades ago. Emma Hartwell had lived with her mother, Diana Hartwell, in a modest house on Maple Street in Westwood. No father listed on the birth certificate. Diana worked as a nurse at Cincinnati General Hospital. By all accounts, she was a devoted mother. But something had terrified Emma. The original police report included a statement from Diana. Emma started having nightmares in late July. She would wake up screaming about the dark place. She said someone had shown it to her. When I asked who, she would just shake her head and go silent. I thought it was just a phase. Children have nightmares. I didn't think. The sentence trailed off. Diana never finished that thought. Sarah requested Diana Hartwell's current contact information. The woman was still alive, 68 years old, living in a nursing home outside Columbus. Sarah and James drove there on the afternoon of October 26th. Diana Hartwell sat in a wheelchair in the facility's common room, staring out a window at bare trees. She didn't recognize the detectives at first. When Sarah mentioned Emma's name, Diana's entire body went rigid. They told me she ran away, Diana said, her voice thin and fragile. The police said runaways often come back. I should wait. But Emma wouldn't run away. She was terrified of someone. Who? Sarah asked gently. Diana's hands trembled. I didn't know his name. He came to the school sometimes. A volunteer, they said. He helped with after-school programs. Emma started coming home different after he arrived. Quieter. She wouldn't play anymore. She would just sit in her room with the lights on. Do you remember his name? James asked. Raymond, Diana whispered. Raymond something. I reported it to the school, but they said there was nothing to investigate. He was a respected community member. I was being paranoid, they said. I was a hysterical mother. And then Emma disappeared, and suddenly nobody wanted to talk about Raymond anymore. Sarah's blood went cold. She pulled up the original police file on her phone and scrolled through the witness statements. There it was, a single mention, buried in a footnote. Witness mentioned volunteer worker named Raymond, but declined to provide further details due to lack of corroborating evidence. Raymond. No last name. No photograph. No follow-up investigation. What did he look like? Sarah asked. Diana closed her eyes. Tall. Gray hair. Kind eyes. That's what made it worse. He looked like someone's grandfather. Gentle. That's what made it so terrible. Emma trusted him. James and Sarah exchanged glances. The description matched the neighbor's account from 33 years ago. They left the nursing home with a single lead and a growing sense of dread. Back at the police station, Sarah ran facial recognition software on every Raymond in the Ohio database from 1991. 43 matches. She narrowed it down. Raymond in his 50s or 60s at that time, meaning he would be in his 80s or 90s now. Still possibly alive. That night, Marcus Webb received another message during the dead air. Raymond took me to the basement, under the school. He said it was a game. He said if I told anyone, he would hurt my mother. The words came through in fragments, Emma's voice overlapping with static, as if she was struggling to push the message through. Sarah, monitoring the broadcast, felt her hands shaking. He kept me there for 3 days, in the dark. He said I was special. That's what he called me. Special. When he finally let me go, I ran. I ran so far. I ran until I couldn't run anymore. The transmission cut out, but James had already pulled up the school records. Sycamore Elementary, built in 1962. According to the blueprints, there was a basement storage area, sealed off in 1998 after structural concerns. We need a warrant, Sarah said. For what? James replied. A basement that was sealed 26 years ago, based on a voice transmission that has no scientific explanation. Based on a credible lead in a 33-year-old missing persons case, Sarah countered. It took 18 hours of paperwork, phone calls to the superintendent, and a careful conversation with the district attorney. But by the morning of October 27th, Sarah and James had a warrant to inspect the sealed basement at Sycamore Elementary School. The principal, a nervous man named Dr. Peterson, led them to a maintenance closet on the ground floor. Behind it, hidden behind decades of stored equipment, was a metal door. We sealed this in 1998, Dr. Peterson explained. There was structural damage. We brought in engineers who said it wasn't safe. We never opened it again. Sarah's pulse quickened. Has anyone gone down there since the seal? Not to my knowledge, Dr. Peterson said. James pushed the door open. It creaked on rusted hinges. A concrete staircase descended into darkness. They turned on their flashlights and went down. The basement was exactly as Emma had described it. A cold, windowless space beneath the school. Storage shelves lined the walls, covered in dust and cobwebs. But in the far corner, Sarah's flashlight caught something that made her stop. A child's shoe. Small, pink, covered in dust, but unmistakably recent. And beside it, scratched into the concrete wall in desperate, childlike letters. Emma was here. The date carved below read, August 14th, 1991. Sarah and James stood in silence, their flashlight beams crossing in the darkness. 33 years. Emma had been right here, trapped in this dark place, and no one had ever found her. But if she was down here, if she'd left her shoe and carved her name, where was her body? That's when James noticed something else. The scratches continued across the wall, leading deeper into the basement. More letters, more words. A message written in the darkness by a child who had no other way to communicate. Sarah followed the beam of her flashlight across the wall and began to read what Emma had written all those years ago, each letter a desperate cry from the dark place. And what she read would change everything. The scratched message on the basement wall read, "He is not alone. He brings others. Help US." Sarah's breath caught. Others meant multiple victims. The investigation just exploded. Within hours, the basement was sealed as a crime scene. Forensic teams arrived. They found Emma's shoe, her fingernails embedded in concrete where she'd clawed at the walls, and traces of blood on a rusted chair in the corner. But no body. The scratched message continued deeper into the basement, leading to a second door, this one padlocked from the outside. Behind it was a second chamber, smaller, darker. Inside, they found children's clothing from different decades, toys, a mattress stained with biological material, and photographs, Polaroids taped to the wall, each one showing a different child, each one dated. 12 children. Over 30 years. Raymond had been systematic. James ran the dates against missing children reports across Ohio, Indiana, and Kentucky. 9 matches. 3 unidentified. By evening, they had a name, Raymond Foster. 87 years old. Retired elementary school teacher. Living in an assisted care facility in Columbus. When Sarah walked into his room at 11 p.m., Raymond Foster was asleep in his bed. Frail. Gray. Exactly as Diana had described him 33 years ago. She woke him by turning on the light. His eyes opened. For a moment, there was confusion. Then recognition. Then something else. A cold, calculating smile. "You found my collection," he said quietly. Sarah's hand went to her service weapon. "Where are the bodies, Raymond?" "Some are still down there," he said. "Some I moved. Some didn't need moving. They stayed where they belonged." "Emma Hartwell," Sarah said. "Where is she?" Raymond's smile widened. Emma was special. She fought back. She scratched. She screamed. Most of them learned to be quiet, but Emma never learned. So I had to teach her a different way. Sarah felt her control slipping. "Where is she?" "In the walls," Raymond whispered. "I sealed the walls in 1997, before they condemned the basement. She's still there, still waiting. That's why she's been calling, isn't it? She's been calling all these years, trying to tell someone where to find her." Sarah arrested him on the spot. By midnight, construction crews were tearing apart the basement walls at Sycamore Elementary. At 2:47 a.m., the exact time Emma had been transmitting, they found her. What remained of her, anyway? Skeletal remains wrapped in a blue blanket, sealed behind brick and mortar 3 decades ago. Emma Hartwell had been dead the entire time. The voice on the radio, the message, the scratches on the wall, it was all real. But Emma had been dead for 33 years, trapped in darkness, waiting for someone to listen. Raymond Foster was charged with 9 counts of murder. The other 3 victims were identified through DNA. 2 remain unidentified. The investigation revealed that Foster had operated undetected for nearly 4 decades because of negligence, miscommunication, and institutional blindness. Teachers reported concerns. Parents reported changes in their children's behavior. But nobody connected the dots. Nobody listened. Until a voice came through a radio frequency that shouldn't have been possible. Marcus Webb stopped working the night shift. He couldn't handle the dead air anymore. But sometimes, he said, he still heard Emma's voice, not frightened anymore, but almost peaceful, as if, finally, someone had answered. The case was closed. Raymond Foster died in prison 2 years later, never revealing the locations of the 3 unidentified victims. But Emma Hartwell's remains were given a proper burial. Her mother attended the funeral, and for the first time in 33 years, she was able to say goodbye. The girl in the static had finally been heard. 6 months after Emma Hartwell's remains were discovered, Sarah Chen sat in her office reviewing the final autopsy report. Cause of death: asphyxiation, complicated by blunt force trauma. The coroner estimated Emma had died within 48 hours of being taken to the basement. She hadn't suffered for years. She'd suffered for 2 days, then Raymond had sealed her away. The 3 unidentified victims were never found. Their families never had closure. They remained cold cases, their names filed away in databases, their stories incomplete. But Emma's case changed how Ohio handled missing children reports. Protocols were updated. Communication between schools and law enforcement was formalized. Foster's negligence, the gaps that allowed him to operate undetected, became a case study in institutional failure. Marcus Webb received media attention he didn't want. True crime podcasters called. News outlets wanted interviews. He declined all of it. He simply returned to his job at a different station, working day shifts now. He never spoke about the voice again. Diana Hartwell died in the nursing home 8 months after Emma's funeral. The staff said she seemed peaceful at the end, as if a weight had finally been lifted. Raymond Foster's house was searched extensively. Investigators found journals dating back to 1983. Meticulous records, photographs, names, locations. But by then, 3 victims had been dead for decades, buried or disposed of in ways Foster refused to reveal, even under interrogation. He took those secrets to his grave. The question that remained unanswered was the one that haunted Sarah the most. How did Emma's voice transmit through a radio frequency 33 years after her death? How did she choose that specific moment to reach out? How did she know to call on 94.7 FM? Science offered no explanation. Physics offered no framework. It was by every measurable standard impossible. Sarah attended Emma's reburial in October 2024, exactly 1 year after the voice first came through the dead air. A small ceremony, a gray Ohio afternoon, a coffin lowered into the ground, a child finally at rest. As the casket descended, Sarah heard something, a crackling sound like static. She looked up. Other people were looking around too, confused. For just a moment, less than a second, a child's voice cut through the afternoon air. "Thank you." Then silence. Complete, absolute silence. The other attendees looked at each other uncertainly. Had they heard it? Had Sarah imagined it? No one spoke about it afterward. It seemed safer that way. But Sarah knew. Emma Hartwell had said goodbye. The radio frequency, 94.7 FM, never transmitted Emma's voice again. Marcus Webb monitored the dead air for months, but remained silent. Whatever had forced Emma's message through the static had finally released her. The case file was closed on November 15, 2024. Raymond Foster's name was added to the list of Ohio's most prolific serial killers. His photograph appeared in textbooks about institutional failure. His legacy became a warning. But Emma Hartwell's legacy was different. She was a child who had been silenced in life and death. A child whose voice had been stolen. A child whose body had been hidden in darkness for 33 years. And then, impossibly, she had spoken. The detectives and investigators who worked the case moved on to other cases. Other victims. Other families seeking answers. But none of them ever forgot the girl in the static. The child whose voice had traveled through time itself to demand to be heard. In the end, that was all Emma Hartwell had ever wanted. Not revenge. Not justice. Just to be heard. Just to have someone know her name. Just to matter. And in October 2024, someone finally listened. The radio went silent. The case was closed. But Emma Hartwell's voice, brief, desperate, and impossibly real, remained in the minds of everyone who heard it. A reminder that some silences are too heavy to bear. Some voices refuse to stay buried. Some truths, no matter how dark, demand to be told.